Hello everyone, here is a quick recap of what we did in class today. So for the purpose of this video I'm using period 4, but it will be the same no matter what class you are in. So in the classwork tab, under cycle 13, there is an assignment called Unit 1, Part 1, Open Response. You are going to open your copy of the document, and you should see this. So what this is a brief assessment from Springboard, which is our curriculum. And what it's asking you to do is to review definition strategies, which is something we covered earlier in the quarter, and then to read a short piece of a speech, find an example of one of these definition strategies, and explain and analyze how it works. So the way that we did this in class was to talk about the definition strategies together, and then to find examples of them in the speech after I read it out loud. And then I explained the writing assignment, and people completed their writing assignments independently. So the first thing that we did was talked about the definition strategies. There are 4 in total. There are only 3 that occur in this particular speech, so those are the ones we're focusing on today. The first one is classification, and what that does is separates whatever is being defined into groups or classes. So an example would be an American is anyone who lives or works in the United States. So you're defining an American, and you're saying there are different groups of people that fit into that definition. One group would be people who live here. One group might be people who work here. Another group might be people who both live and work in the United States. If you want a more real-world example, you could talk about what defines a Reading High School student, and you could say that different groups that fit under that definition would be 9th graders, 10th graders, 11th graders, and 12th graders. So you're defining Reading High School student, and you are doing that by dividing that definition into different groups. The next one is exemplification, which is when you are using specific examples to add weight to a concept or a definition. This one we dealt with pretty extensively in the fall. So the example here is a good example of an American is Barack Obama. You are talking about one specific person that you are applying to the definition of American. Ways that you might apply this to Reading would be an example of a principal is Mr. Turman, or an example of an English teacher is Miss Ritter. Either way, you have one specific person that you're pointing to and saying that they meet the criteria of the definition. And the last one is function. This one we did not deal with much in the fall because it was not present in the articles we were reading at that time. But what function does is explains a definition in terms of the purpose of its parts. So a person shows they are American by being accepting of diversity. So that action of accepting diversity has the purpose of showing that somebody's an American. You might say something like, a person shows they are a Reading High School student by wearing Reading High School t-shirts and sweatshirts, or by attending and cheering for the football team at home games. It's an action or something that someone does that shows that they belong to a particular defined group. So the directions here were for people to follow along while I read and to underline examples in this speech of the difference between dreamers and doers. So Shonda Rhimes is giving 2 different definitions. She's defining people that she calls dreamers, and she's defining people that she calls doers. So I'm going to read this out loud, and then I will pick out some examples that we talked about in class. When people give these kind of speeches, they usually tell you all kinds of wise and heartfelt things. They have wisdom to impart. They have lessons to share. They tell you, follow your dreams. Listen to your spirit. Change the world. Make your mark. Find your inner voice and make it sing. Embrace failure. Dream. Dream and dream big. As a matter of fact, dream and don't stop dreaming until all of your dreams come true. I think that's crap. I think a lot of people dream. And while they're busy dreaming, the happy people, the really successful people, the really interesting, engaged, powerful people are busy doing. The dreamers, they stare at the sky and they make plans and they hope and they talk about it endlessly. And they start a lot of sentences with, I want to be, or I wish. I want to be a writer. I wish I could travel around the world. And they dream of it. The buttoned-up ones meet and they brag about their dreams. And the hippie ones have vision boards and they meditate about their dreams. Maybe you write in journals about your dreams or discuss it endlessly with your best friend or your girlfriend or your mother. And it feels really good. You're talking about it and you're planning it. Kind of. You are blue skying your life. And that is what everyone says you should be doing, right? I mean, that's what Oprah and Bill Gates did to get successful, right? No. Dreams are lovely, but they are just dreams. Fleeting, short-lived, pretty. But dreams do not come true just because you dream them. It's hard work that makes things happen. It's hard work that creates change. So lesson 1, I guess, is ditch the dream and be a doer, not a dreamer. Maybe you know exactly what it is you dream of being, or maybe you're paralyzed because you have no idea what your passion is. The truth is, it doesn't matter. You don't have to know. You just have to keep moving forward. You just have to keep doing something, seizing the next opportunity, staying open to trying something new. It doesn't have to fit your vision of the perfect job or the perfect life. Perfect is boring and dreams are not real. Just do. So if you think, I wish I could travel, great. Sell your crappy car, buy a ticket to Bangkok, and go. Right now. I'm serious. So what I did as I was reading here was to underline some of the examples that we came up with in class. So then what we did is talked about each example and which definition strategy it fits into. So this one here, she's defining doers, right? The people that are busy doing. And in order to do that, she's talking about different types of people that fit into that category of doers. So she's talking about happy people, successful people, interesting, engaged, and powerful people. And because of all of that, she's splitting the definition of doers up into groups. So I'm going to highlight that one in yellow because that is an example of classification. Separating what is defined into groups or classes. The next one down here is talking about things that dreamers do, right? So certain activities that they do that have the purpose of defining them as dreamers. They stare, they make plans, they hope, they talk, and they start sentences in this particular way. So all of those actions have purpose, and that purpose is to define them as dreamers. So for this reason, that classifies as function. This one could go a couple different ways, but basically what it is doing is talking about two different types of dreamers. Buttoned up ones, which would mean they are formal, and hippie ones who are informal. So because it's giving us two groups within a larger definition, that is classification. This one here is the only example in this speech where she gives us specific people that apply to definitions, and therefore that is exemplification, specific examples. Then here, she's telling us what to do. Ditch the dream and be a doer. So actions that have a purpose. That is function. And then she gives more specific list of actions that have the purpose of creating a life for you as a doer, right? And she says that is moving forward, doing something, seizing opportunity, and staying open. So now we have some examples highlighted of each one of those definition strategies. We have two examples of classification, 3 examples of function, and an example of exemplification. So the last thing that you needed to do independently was to write a paragraph in which you identify one of the definition strategies, either classification, exemplification, or function, and analyze how Rhymes uses that strategy to support her definition of dreamers. Be sure to include evidence from the passage in your response. Do not simply summarize the text. So if you feel capable of doing this on your own, you can delete this red text and type in your paragraph. If you would like some help, what you can do is come down here. These are 5 sentence frames that will create a paragraph for you. All you need to do is pick out your examples and fill in the blanks. So it gives you a topic sentence. In her Dartmouth commencement address on June 8th, 2014, Shonda Rhimes used the definition strategy of blank to support her definition of dreamers. So all you put here is the name of whichever strategy you're choosing to talk about. Classification, exemplification, or function. The next step is to find a quote from the text that is using that definition strategy that you just picked. So if you used classification, then you're looking up here for one of the yellow examples. You're going to copy it and paste it into the blank here. To help define dreamers, Rhymes said, quote. The next step is where you really have to put things in your own words. This is where you are analyzing how the quote is an example of the definition strategy. So it's an example of function because, and then tell me how it works. And then the second part is to tell me how that particular definition strategy that she used, the quote, helps her define dreamers. What does it tell you about a dreamer? And finally, conclusion sentence, you just have to put in the name of that definition strategy a second time. So therefore, Rhymes' use of classification supports her definition of dreamers. So one more time, you are picking which strategy you want to talk about, copying and pasting an example from the speech of her using that strategy, explaining how that quote is an example of that strategy, explaining how that quote helps define dreamers, and then putting the name of the strategy again in your conclusion sentence. Once you have filled in those blanks, that is all you need to do. You submit the assignment to me on Classroom, and you are good to go.